Welcome to Taiwan Talks, covering the latest global news from a Taiwan perspective. I'm Albert Chiu. The South China Sea continues to be a flashpoint for conflict, particularly between China and the Philippines. According to the recently published map by the Chinese Communist Party in 2023, it asserts sovereignty over Taiwan, the South China Sea, the India-China border. This action has understandably upset several countries, including Taiwan, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Is the CCP indifferent to China-Philippines relations? Joining us today for discussion are Andrea Yang, Democratic Progressive Party, Deputy Secretary General. She stayed in Philippines for 1.5 years for party diplomacy. And Lucio III Pitlo, Foreign Policy and Security Analyst. Lucia, Andrea, very warm welcome to both on the show. In the CCP's new version of the map, it has expanded the 9 dash line to 10 dash line, encompassing most of South China Sea. The Philippine Foreign Ministry has already declared China's 9 dash line as invalid. The Philippines' stance on the South China Sea was also upheld by an international tribunal in 2016. Besides China, Taiwan, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, and the Philippines also have claims over parts of the South China Sea. So my first question would go to Lucio. So in your perspective, why does the CCP want to expand the 9 dash line to the 10 dash line if the original version seems workable for them?
Well, yes, in Southeast Asia, we're more familiar with the 9 dash line that, of course, try to illegally appropriate almost all the features in the waters of the South China Sea. And, of course, the Philippines had protested that, along with neighbors Vietnam, Malaysia, Brunei, including Indonesia, because these dashes also overlap with the exclusive economic zone of Natuna Islands. So this is, of course, working for China for some time, but the addition of a new line in the east of Taiwan suggests, that the cross-strait developments has more to do with this new standard map that China recently issued.
So that has to do with the inclusion of Taiwan as part of the map, right? Andrea, so also I wonder, to the perspective of Taiwan's government, what's the meaning of the change from 9 dash line to 10 dash line?
Of course, we need to invite the audience to think about this question altogether, because we first know that China introduced this 9 dash line in 2009 to the UN. It was more of an official year that we know about China's perspective. But I think this recent move was rather provocative. I think India was the first country to issue the protest against China's action. So it was, from what we know, internally China's government officials were also not happy with the timing of this release. So whether it's internal consensus in China or this is a new strategy to make a voice and make a gesture in this region, but it's pretty mysterious that why China would pick this. Of course, this is a regular release by China. They release the map every year. But this, the action was obviously a very provocative one to make India, Vietnam, Brunei, Malaysia, all this country unhappy. And it was long time included Taiwan, that China took every opportunity to claim Taiwan as part of its territory. So we also issued a Taiwanese government, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs also would make a statement against this move. So it was a very interesting development.
Well, I speculate this change to 10 dash line as a consequence of the escalation between the U.S.-China kind of competition. Both of you agree with this kind of assessment? Maybe Lucio can add up to this.
Yes, so certainly, of course, U.S.-China competition and, of course, cross-strait developments, all of this have a bearing on the timing of this issuance of a new map. But again, of course, this does not help China improve its perception among its neighbors. So neighborhood diplomacy of China suffered, because the timing of the release of the map came days ahead of important meetings in countries hosting these important gatherings that are affected by this map. Jakarta was the site of the ASEAN summit, and New Delhi, hosting the G20 summit. So I think this is ill-timed and ill-advised, to say the least.
Okay, so I mean, could I say that Philippines is sort of innocent, given the fact that there's a conflict between U.S. and China, and try to make big deal of the South China Sea, either from the United States or from China. But Philippines just stick to its own gun, remains the same regarding the sovereignty of the South China Sea. So now my next question still goes to Lucio. So what is Philippine government's response to the 10-dash line? Because you just mentioned there's a such change, but could you kind of further elaborate Philippines government's reaction to it?
So this issuance of a new map comes at the heels of recent sea incidents, of course, involving the Philippines and China, and all of these untoward sea incidents, plus the issuance of this new administrative map, of course, steered disquiet in the Philippines. And if there is any positive outcome, from all of these disturbances, is that it pushed the Philippines. It forced the hands of the Philippines to act with this on these matters with more urgency. So the Philippines is now considering issuing its own standard map in reply to this map by Beijing, and that map would most likely include our maritime zones as per UNCLOS and as per the 2016 arbitral award. So maritime zones that includes waters and features in our western seaboard, as well as most likely our extended continental shelf in the Philippine Rise, formerly known as Benham Rise in our northeast. So this map will, for the first time, tell domestic audience as well as the international audience that this is the Philippines, and this is the metes and bounds of the Philippines, including its maritime zones that are part of its maritime entitlements according to international law.
Well, maritime zone and also the zone for EEZ would definitely be very crucial to the development of Philippines. We all understand that. But given the fact that there's a new version of the map released by Philippines, you also have to have operation force. How would Philippine government and also the military or even Coast Guard there to implement this task? I mean, do you guys have enough force to implement the idea or the theory from this new map?
Correct. So it's a challenge for a maritime and archipelagic country like the Philippines, to guard and protect such a vast maritime domain. So we have been taking steps, towards this direction. We have been investing in modernizing our Coast Guard, in our Navy, as well as our Air Force, to be able to patrol, these waters and the airspace above them, to deter intrusions in our waters. And also we're building infrastructure, in our administered features in the Spratlys. We have settlers there, we have troops there stationed in these areas. So we are doing these steps from our side, and also working with our allies and partners, to capacitate our maritime forces in terms of joint drills, joint military exercises, information sharing, cooperation for maritime domain awareness. So all of these things will help the Philippines going forward be able to address, this deficit, maritime deficit.
Okay, Andrea, so what does Taiwanese government's reaction to this dispute? Given what Lucio just mentioned, Philippines also came up with a new map and tried to claim sovereignty and also the EEZ, the fisheries rights in this zone. Is Taiwanese government, standing together with Philippines? Because we know that even between Taiwan and the Philippines, there's a conflict, right? Yes. Regarding the fishermen's kind of the interest. So what's your evaluation of this?
Yes, the political issues in this zone is rather complicated, given that Taiwan is already having enough issue directly with China. The South China Sea issue, we can see that the Taiwanese government chose to be more silent on this issue. We don't want to jump into this controversial discussion to sort of we focus more on our territory, that Taiwan Island itself, that Chinese government already claimed that the entire Taiwan is a part of it. So it's more significant for us. But with the South China Sea, we can see that the commercial value in this area, that all the countries in this place are long-time historical conflicts. So we do not expect this issue to be resolved in a short time, and also in the in international court. Although all those countries have continued to emphasize the importance of following international laws and regulations and other agreements, but I think it is very interesting to see China's later reaction, especially Xi Jinping's answer. He was very interested, absent in the ASEAN summit and also G20. So after this map was released, so we don't know whether this is a grand China strategy to go against the U.S. and the rest of the ASEAN countries, or the countries who claim they have this the share of the territory in this area. But we can see that when Biden visited Vietnam recently, they had this joint statement to protest China's unilateral claim on this area. So we see that the stance of the U.S. government was pretty clear on this.
Okay, we just talk about the change from 9-9 to 10-9, which indicates the major change as Taiwan being part of China in the new map.
Yeah.
We also talk about how Taiwanese government respond to this conflict between the Philippines and Chinese government, the CCP. So I also wonder what Philippine government's reaction to the 10-9, which includes Taiwan as part of China, given the fact that I know that Philippine government still stick to this one China policy.
Yeah, so we have this maritime zones bill, which has long languished, in the Congress. So with this new measures, coming from China, the recent sea incidents, plus this issuance of a new map, there's now an effort to create a special committee within the Senate that is on Admiralty and maritime zones, and that is to expedite, necessary hearings. And the end goal is to issue a new map, which would include the Philippine maritime zones, maybe discuss, sea lanes and, resources within these maritime zones that belong to the Philippines. And maybe there would be more discussions with partners and allies on how to address these challenges of foreign illegal fishing, these intrusions in Philippine waters, and how to push back, against these attempts to rewrite, maritime rules of the road, making entitlement claims that are excessive. Right.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but I was wondering what's Philippines' response to the 10-9 that includes Taiwan as part of China. So, I know it might be tough for you, but any kind of speculation what Philippine government might have on this change?
Like most of our neighbors, we have protested this new map. So whether it's 9 or 10 or 11 or 12, as long as they would include features and waters that are within the Philippines based on UNCLOS and based on the arbitral award of 2016, we would protest.
Okay, good. So Lucio, also, we kind of moved the topic further into the domestic Philippine society. So we know that the South China Sea dispute, China very often used the water cannon to attack Philippine Coast Guard ship in South in August. We know that in the domestic Philippines, there's a pro-United States and also pro-China, two different factions roughly. So how such aggression engendered anti-China sentiments within the Philippines?
Well, certainly these untoward sea incidents that do not contribute to building mutual trust and confidence between both sides. So it really adversely affect bilateral relations between the Philippines and China. And of course, the public is very exasperated between, with all of these developments. And there's clamor to do more than just simply lodge diplomatic protests. and of course working with allies and partners because of the power asymmetry between Philippines and China. So one logical step would be to work more with allies and partners to signal to Beijing that we would increase this kind of necessary maritime security engagement with allies and partners in order to address, the pressure, coming from Beijing.
Okay, let me put the question in a different way. Would you say that there's any pro-China voice in the domestic Philippines regarding the South China Sea, saying that we don't need to go into disputes with China, just given the fact that there's a conflict between the United States and China, and even involving Taiwan? Any kind of voice like that in the domestic Philippine society, you think?
Well, because China is the country's largest trade partner, of course, there will be voices that would say that we have to tone down, lower down the temperature. We have to find ways to deal with this issue in a more diplomatic, through dialogue, more discreetly, But if we have these kinds of incidents happening more frequent, and using water cannons or dangerous maneuvers that might endanger the life, and limb of maritime law enforcement personnel of Philippine Coast Guard, then of course, those voices might be marginalized, and there would be stronger voices, calling for greater engagement with the U.S., support for modernization of Philippine Coast Guard, taking more necessary legal steps, to show Philippine resolve to address these issues.
Okay, Andrea, so let's talk about another player, the United States, which behind everything behind the scene. Could you explain the U.S. policy as you observe regarding the South China Sea? What specific approach does the U.S. take to assist Philippines in maintaining its right to the EEZ zone in the South China Sea?
Well, U.S.'s policy, closely monitor on China's military expansion and also the increase of their defense budget. So together with the South China Sea controversial issues, that U.S. might be more concerned about China's real intention, given they have increased their military ship to nearly, I think, over 400 ships. But where can they park the ship? So they would need more maritime area to put the ship. So it's either in the Pacific or in the Indo-Pacific seas. So it's either they go to the east or to the south. So the U.S. Government has urged China to explain their historical claims on this area, and they made a lot of statements. But I think the U.S. government is more concerned about China's military expansion and intentions in the long run. That would be more important to observe, especially that recently the U.S. government has very close military cooperation with the Philippines. They increased the military bases. So all these significant cooperations would be very important to either safeguard the neutrality of South China Sea, or play a more impartial third party. But I think the U.S. definitely would not want to see China's influence go cross the line.
So would you, Lucio, would you say that the Philippines are glad or optimistic about the United States involvement in the issue of South China Sea, or any kind of different perspective from the Philippines society?
Well, the United States is the Philippines' treaty ally, and of course, much of our external defense relies on this mutual defense, so security guarantee provided by the U.S. So that has been for a long time the bedrock of our external defense. But of course, times have changed, and we have to invest in modernizing our own military and our own Coast Guard, because we have a very big maritime domain, and of course, neighbors have also been investing in modernizing their maritime capacities. And of course, China is presiding over the largest buildup of its navy peacetime. So all of this create a lot of anxieties and concerns, among regional countries, not least the Philippines. So we're trying to improve our working relations with the U.S., to try to to have more training, exercises, information sharing, maritime domain awareness, and of course, capacity to patrol our waters. So, having more partners and allies will be helpful in order to address, challenges from the maritime domain.
Okay, and now let's talk about somewhat a different topic. Is the conflict in the South China Sea still, but not between the Philippines and China, but between Philippines and other countries. We know that the maritime conflict in the South China Sea, extend beyond the China and the Philippines. Tensions are also between the Philippines and, say, Vietnam, right, and also Taiwan. Considering that, similar to China, both Vietnam and the Philippines, let's talk about Vietnam, have undertaken limited island building activities in this area. So is there any potential for competitive friction between the Philippines and these nations?
Well, of course, there's competition for resource access. There's competition, for sovereignty over these features, sovereign rights over the waters, and the resources beneath them. But it's a different thing, when you have a big neighbor that claims almost the entirety of the sea, and of course, try to impose its will, try to enforce its domestic law, try to prevent normal routine resupply missions to outposts by its neighbors in the Spratlys, and also interfere in the fishing and oil and gas activities of its neighbors. I think these are different. This is a whole new different level. I mean, yeah, we have issues with Malaysia, with Vietnam, but we have not seen these kinds of disruptions or interference, from them.
Right. Andrea, what's interesting about the same topic is that from the historical perspective and also legal documents, the Republic of China, which is Taiwan, also claims this part of the zone actually has the 11 dash line, yes. Right? So if we follow the logic of the CCP, everything within that dash line belongs to China. But by the same token, everything within that 11 dash line belongs to Taiwan. I know that President Tsai Ing-wen in the past, once said this regarding this issue. So what's the new policy or the current policy, at least from the current ruling party?
I think it is important to understand that the current DPP governments encourages we meaningfully participate in the international organizations and even join the international dialogues. So we would not unilaterally like China to draw a new line or cross the line, that sort of surprising actions. So I think Taiwanese government is trying to build up a steady channel with the international like-minded partners. But I think, as I mentioned before, that we chose to be more silent on the South China Sea dispute.
Does that mean surrender the rights?
No, it's not. It's like we rationally know that yelling or aggressive statements would not help. So it's important that all these stakeholders, countries, who would historically believe that this part is part of their countries or that part is part of someone's country, that should have a proper opportunity for discussion instead of making this a non-stop argument. So the long complicated history after Second World War should have, we hope it would have the chance to bring up to the international negotiation table and have a rational discussion on this.
Okay, Lucio, given the instance in the overlapping EEZs of Taiwan and the Philippines, including confrontations between Taiwanese fishermen and the Philippines Coast Guard in the past, right? So the heightened threat from the CCP. I mean, given there's a shared kind of enemy or targets, China out there that Taiwan and the Philippines should fight against, do you think there's any kind of room left for Taiwan and the Philippines to go hand in hand to achieve the goal of going against China, or preventing China from any kind of aggression?
Well, I think there's always that opportunity. The waters of Batanes and northern Luzon, southern Taiwan, they're very close to each other. So these are shared waters, and so of course they are affected by this new administrative map because the lines also cross in these waters. And so I think there was previously a fisheries cooperation agreement between both sides, and that could be a platform, that both sides can take off from. Of course, try to improve some kind of maritime law enforcement cooperation, maybe some kind of search and rescue or disaster humanitarian assistance in terms of when inclement weather or bad weather affect fishermen or communities in these areas. So I think there's scope for some cooperation along those lines.
Would you assess in this way that is the Philippine government and also the society cares about Taiwan more than before, simply because of these increasing aggression or conflict between the United States and China, and in turns that there's a lot of things going on in the South China Sea. So what's the sentiments towards Taiwan now in the Philippine society? Maybe that's related to South China Sea, maybe related to just in general. What's your take on this?
Well, of course, there's growing interest, about developments in cross-strait. Philippines and Taiwan are very close to each other, and there are about 150,000 Filipinos working, living, studying here in Taiwan. And so that provides a human face to the relations between both sides. And of course, because of the proximity, whatever happens to Taiwan will have bearing on the security of the Philippines. And so Philippines has been working with US, to maybe provide some kind of assistance in the event of a contingency. So there are discussions, in that direction. Of course, this is unwelcome by Beijing, but certainly, as the tensions and cross-strait developments become more insecure, then I think there will be more room for discussion on how to respond, to this challenge.
Okay, Lucio, Andrea, very thankful for the great insights. Did you find this episode enlightening? Please leave us a message and subscribe to Taiwan Talks. Until next time, take care.